I'm your host, John Myers, live from Stillwater, Oklahoma. We have got a great show tonight. It's John Myers. Hey, everybody. Gotta have my notes. It's John Myers from the Kicker UnMasked studios. Gotta have my notes. Alternator. Hey, everybody. We have fun. Hey, everybody. Hit like and subscribe. Right here, right now. It's John Myers. We like to give stuff away. Alternator. Post some more pictures. We got to thank Steve and Becky live from Stillwater, Oklahoma. Don't forget Texas Roadhouse right here, right now. Hey, everybody. Don't forget right here, right now. We have got a great show tonight. Hey, everybody. Had a great dinner tonight. It's John Myers. Right here, right now. Had a great dinner tonight. So, hey, everybody. So, housekeeping. Had a great dinner tonight. So, alternator. Housekeeping. Housekeeping. 7:30 on Tuesday night. Housekeeping. From the Kicker UnMasked studios. Housekeeping. Right here, right now. Hey, everybody. So, it's John Myers. Hey, everybody. It's John Myers from the Kicker UnMasked studios. Hey, everybody. From the Kicker UnMasked studios. It's John Myers. Right here, right now. We have got a great show tonight. Hey, everybody. We have got a great show tonight. It's John Myers. Hey, everybody. Right here. Hey, everybody, it is Tuesday night, 7:30, coming to you live right here from Stillwater, Oklahoma for Unmasked. We had a great show last week. If you guys didn't see that, you need to go back and watch it. We had Brian Schmidt in the studio. Yep, he was right here. We were talking about the Master Tech Expo. And if you guys haven't registered for that, make sure you register. Just remember, if you can't make it, don't register, because you're still going to have to pick up your way to get there, your room, and your food, but we're going to get you the tickets that Brian has passed on to us to get you into the show. That's an $850 value, so it's definitely worth going if you guys like car audio. But it was a great show last week. We've got an even cooler show this week. At least that's my own personal opinion. We've got a great cast on hand. I'm going to have Jacob come out and join me here in a couple minutes. We got Bill, Ernie, and JW in the back. Hey, guys, say hi back there. So they're behind the scenes, taking care of all the details. Well, I get to come up here and play all night. So tonight's going to be a lot of fun. Just remember, all this is live. And if you guys should have seen what's going on 10, 15 minutes ago back here, you talk about a bunch of ants scurrying around trying to get some things dialed in that we found at the last minute. Yes, this is live. We don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to have some fun anyway. So, and what are we talking about? Blowing speakers. I've been tired of people, putting on there, oh, this speaker blew in 5 minutes. It's a piece of junk. It's, maybe it's not the speaker, but we're going to show you exactly what it takes to blow a speaker and why they blow, and the differences between too much power and too little power. So make sure you hang on for that. It is a cold night here in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I think it was 14 degrees when I went to lunch, or 16, something like that. Also had dinner. Can you guess what we had? If you said Texas Roadhouse, you're wrong. We actually had Chipotle tonight. So get a little fire going in the intestines for tonight. Keep things all nice and warm. So I'm going to let Ernie take over. We're going to run to a quick little commercial. We're going to come back with Jacob, and we're going to jump right into this mess of blowing up speakers. So stay tuned. We'll see you in a few minutes, or a minute.
It's been a long road since the original Kicker christened that first pickup truck. It kicked off a car audio renaissance, and upgrading your music in a vehicle was a requirement. America's music machines became living loud over your passion, your emotion, your existence. Outdoors or on the open road, your sound is Kicker.
So what do you think, Jacob? Good dinner tonight?
Yeah, it was good. We'll see if it's still good in about 30 minutes.
Yeah, we're going to see if we can both last through this one. That was kind of a gut bomb, but it was a good gut bomb. So, yeah, we're going to have some fun. Giveaways. You guys know, if you've been on the show before watching us, that we like to give stuff away. And if this is your first time watching the show, welcome to the show. Welcome to Everything Car Audio. Make sure if you guys like what you're seeing, like and subscribe, tell your buddies, and if you got any suggestions for some ideas for the show, hey, we're always open. We may not do it, but we'll always take suggestions, especially involves breaking and blowing stuff up. I like doing that.
That's the most fun part.
So show you how to do it and how not to do it. So anyway, so if you're the first time viewer, what you want to do is you want to get on your browser and you want to type in www.kicker.com/umweekly. Ernie, why don't you go ahead and pull that up on my laptop here. Once you dial in to Kicker Unmasked Weekly Giveaway, this is the screen you're going to see every week. We'd have the show, which is every other week. We give away some prizes. The third prize winner almost always gets a set of EB400s, little Bluetooth earbuds. They also get a gray Kicker t-shirt. They also get a Kicker Unmasked koozie. Second place is going to get the Tabor Bluetooth over-the-ear headphones, the gray Kicker Unmasked t-shirt, and the koozie. And normally we give away Cush C's.
Yeah, normally we do.
Yeah, but I've been telling you, we're running out of those things. So we have switched that up. So the first place winner, the grand prize winner tonight, is going to get the Bullfrog 100. That's the BF 100, the little Bluetooth speaker you can set in a cup holder. It is completely waterproof. Throw it in the pool, the hot tub, let it roll around and play music. Actually, kind of fun because you actually watch the music splatter the water all around it. It's really kind of an interesting thing to do. And, you know, it doesn't play too well completely underwater when you hold it underwater. It's not that powerful. But yes, I have tried that. So you're also going to get the gray Kicker Unmasked t-shirt, which is the one right behind us back here, and you're going to get the Kicker koozie. So all kinds of cool things. And like and subscribe, guys. We like doing this. We want to keep doing it. So Jacob, welcome to the show tonight. We're going to have some fun.
Cool. Thanks for having me on, John. I'm excited to show these guys what we got in store tonight.
Yeah, so what do we have? What are we going to do? What are we going to talk about?
Well, tonight,
besides everything that's on my notes here.
Yeah.
Yep, I got to check my notes. Right, Ernie?
Tonight we're talking about what it takes to blow up a subwoofer, burn the voice coil. So
just a subwoofer?
Not just subwoofers, but full-range speakers, coaxials, tweeters, anything that moves and makes sound like a speaker.
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions out there in the world, and, you know, hey, we like to try things, and, you know, we learn things as we go, and, you know, some things we think we know, and we get actually to prove it in the lab, and it's like, yeah, that wasn't exactly the way we thought. But so we're going to put some things to the test and run some power, but, you know, you came from the tech line. How many phone calls did you get on average and percentage-wise dealing with blown speakers?
Oh, man. So on a normal day, we'd probably get 25 to 30 phone calls each, and I would say about half of those were blown speakers or people with questions trying to get their amps tuned properly so they don't blow any more speakers. It's a pretty common, one of the more common issues that we hear about.
Yeah, and it is really common. And, you know, blown speakers, it's just, you know, we unfortunately cover most of that under warranty, which we really shouldn't, because it pretty much is abuse. It's not a manufacturer's defect, and we'll show you exactly what it takes to blow speakers. But, you know, it's kind of cool that we actually cover that, and the fact that, you know, what percentage of speakers that come back do you think are like abused and blown?
I don't know, John. I know that most of the stuff that comes back, as far as electronics, there's not actually anything wrong with it. But as far as
a lot of no problems found.
Yeah.
But speaker-wise, you know, it's just, I bet you probably 90% of the speakers that are returned because of, you know, improper setup, you know, user abuse, neglect, whatever you want to call it. So, we want to make sure you guys enjoy your products. It doesn't matter what brand you buy. This is not just a Kicker only demonstration. This applies to anything speaker related, right?
Yeah.
So what does it take to blow a speaker? Well, we got to kind of talk about what speakers are. Now, a speaker basically is made up of a coil of wire with a suspension, so it's allowed to move in and out, and a magnetic field. So you've got the coil wire, and that's where the problem is. If we could eliminate voice coils, we could eliminate blown speakers almost altogether, but they probably wouldn't sound very good because, there are speakers out there that don't have voice coils.
I didn't know that.
Yep, you've got speakers called ribbon tweeters. You've got piezo tweeters like we use in some of the KB6s, or little bookshelf speakers that have the 6.5 in the horn. Those actually use a little, basically, plastic diaphragm that's statically charged rather than using a voice coil and magnetic field. So those actually don't have voice coils, but if you blow a piezo tweeter, man, you are abusive. So we need to really go into details on what it takes to blow a speaker. And tonight's going to be a little interesting because, many, many months ago, we tried doing this before with me. We actually have a little tablet up here, and what I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to draw on this tablet, and what we're going to do is we're going to probably cut away from the video of me completely, so you're going to see nothing but the tablet, and I'm going to attempt to draw this stuff. So if I forget to say hi to you guys, I know we had Bobby out there, we've got Deviant, we've got Andy, and don't forget to watch Andy next week at this time. Andy's got some cool stuff he's giving away, so make sure you tune in. And if you're not a member of the Kicker Club, go ahead and sign up for that too, because that really is a fun organization where we get in and answer questions, and you guys can post pictures, and Nathan, or Jacob's going to pull some pictures up a little bit later and show you some of the stuff that he pulled up off the web. So make sure you sign in for that. So we're going to talk about how speakers work and how they relate to amplifiers and what power is and what it does. And Ernie, go ahead and switch over the tablet. Cross your fingers this is going to work, guys. So, hey, we have a tablet up here. So as I go through this, I'm going to try to draw everything out. Maybe I can use different colors. But what we have essentially, we have a speaker on the left, and we have what is on the right, which is representative by what we call amplifier rails. So an amplifier has a positive rail and it has a negative rail because the speaker has both a push and a pull. So what we want to do is we want to look at a sine wave, an actual sine wave. So when the amplifier is going to produce music, if we take a sine wave, it fits within the voltage rails. It fits within the plus and minus. The speaker is going to be just fine. The amplifier can produce that without any problem. So what happens with this sine wave, and we're going to go ahead and leave the pen in black for a moment. So as the speaker gets signal from the amplifier, it starts right here at the entry point, and that's the beginning of the sine wave. And from that point to the top of the waveform right here, that speaker is pushed outward in a positive fashion. From this point right here, all the way down to the bottom of the next portion of the sine wave, the speaker is going to be traveling backwards to where it's going to stop there, and then it's going to travel back forwards. So that is how a speaker works. It has a push and a pull, and that's how it relates to the voltage rails on the amplifier. Now let's say we had an amplifier that had a plus and minus 15 volt rail, so 30 volt swing altogether. That's 30 volts peak to peak. That would be a pretty decent amplifier. It's going to produce a fair amount of power. So we've just said, hey, the speaker's going to move nice smoothly in and out. It's going to follow that sine wave. Everything is going to work just fine. So what happens when we push it a little bit harder? I mean, we're not working the amplifier very hard at this point. So let's go back and let's see if I can't delete some of the little blotches on here. I don't think it's going to let me do that. Well, it's going to delete everything. So, all right, so we're going to go ahead and do that. We'll just draw this back on there. That's the nice thing about this little tablet. All right, so we have this sine wave. And even though it's probably a little different than the last one, it's the same idea. So that speaker is moving in and out in relationship to time because the time factor continues this way and the power factor goes both up and down from that 0 point. If I want this to play louder, if I put more power into it, I increase the voltage. So let's go to the blue color. I'm going to turn this up a little bit. I'm going to turn this up to the point where the top and bottom of this waveform just touches the top and the bottom of the rails. That is at clipping. That means that amplifier is produce as much power as it can produce cleanly. And what's going to happen, if you notice in relationship, what we have here is we have the speaker being pushed farther than it did before by turning up louder. So we're actually getting a longer travel out of that speaker, and it still works great. Everything's happy. The speaker's, mechanically able to handle the power. Electrically, the amplifier can produce that. But what do people want? What do they want, Jacob?
More power, obviously.
They want more. They want more output. We always want more power, more
so
gooder.
What happens if you turn it up even higher than that?
All right. So we're gonna go to red on this one. So
that's an accurate color.
Yes, it is. So if we push this beyond its limit, so we push it really hard, it hits the voltage rail, and we want it to do this. And then it's going to come back here, and we want it to continue to make a nice sine wave. But what's happening is it's not making a sine wave, it's making something called square wave. And square wave looks like square. So what is physically happening when it's doing square waves? So let's go ahead and take some of the scribbles off here. So from this point to this point, that speaker moves out to its maximum point. From this point to this point, right in here, that speaker's not moving. So the speaker basically is being pushed out, it's being held there by the power of the amplifier, and it's not moving. When we start talking about power and energy, you cannot create it, you can't take it away, but you can change its form. So the three I like to talk about the most are heat, light, and motion. Those three, you can basically change their form from one to the next. Well, what do we mean by change the form of energy? So I'll give you an example. Let's use cars, because most people are familiar with their cars. So if you're flying down Interstate 35 doing 90 miles an hour like Ernie usually does when he's traveling here and back home every day, he sees a highway patrolman. What do you think Ernie's going to do? He's going to probably go faster, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, he's going to try and outrun him.
Hopefully, Ernie's going to hit the brakes. So you slam on the brakes of the car. What happens to the speed?
It goes down.
The speed goes down. What do you think happens to the temperatures of the brakes?
It's going to go up.
The temperature of the brakes go up. So what we've done is we've traded motion for heat. Same thing, light energy can get turned into heat energy. So that heat energy can get turned into motion. I mean, solar panels, for example. Let's talk transmissions. You got a truck that's just driving up and down the freeway, not pulling any load. That transmission never gets warm at all. But you hook up a 10,000-pound fifth-wheel trailer to your Ford F-350, start going up a hill, you're putting a lot of energy into that transmission, but you're not getting the same transfer of motion. What do you think's happened to the temperature of your transmission?
It's probably going to get hot.
It's going to get hot, and that's why they have transmission coolers, and they've got gauges to monitor that. We don't have really, transmission coolers or gauges to monitor the temperature in speakers. We do have to work with the speaker development and the design to help get the heat out of the voice coil as, mechanically, efficiently as possible. And we do that with our forced air cooling on the back of the speakers. So a speaker is going to work very similar to the engine on a car. So the voice coil is going to work basically like the pistons. That which moves up and down, that's where the heat is created. So from there, the heat from the pistons is transferred to the engine block. That's like the center pole piece on the speaker. Then from the engine block, heat's got to go somewhere to be dissipated in the atmosphere. That goes to the radiator. Well, the speaker's radiator is the back plate of the speaker. So if you're playing your music pretty hard and the back of your speaker gets warm, your speaker's doing its job. They're not extremely efficient. A speaker's on average 2 to 4% efficient. That means power in versus power out. So 96% of the power is wasted as heat. So you got to get rid of that heat. And that's if it's operating properly. But looking back at this graph here, we talked about the speaker, from this point across here, across the top, is staying stationary, and as it moves backwards, it's got some movement, and then at the bottom of that waveform, the bottom of that square wave, it stays stationary again before it travels back up to the 0 point. So, and there's 2 points in the top and bottom where it's actually riding along the voltage rails. You've got this energy you're putting into the speaker. So you're dumping a ton of energy into it. At that point, we said the speaker's not moving.
Yeah, so it's being turned into heat
Yep.
instead of motion.
And it's not light either, so heat is all that's left.
Well, if it gets hot enough, it could be light, but...
Yep. So this is why we say if you're blowing your speakers, you don't have enough power. Yep, I just said it. If you're blowing your speakers, you don't have enough power. But people say, well, yes, John, I have plenty of power. I've got an amplifier that's capable of producing 3,000 watts of power, and I've got a 1,000-watt speaker. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to back all this off just a minute, back all the red out of this. So we look at just the normal waveform. It's pretty cool it'll let me do that. So what we're going to look at now is the fact that we've got plenty of power going into the amplifier. It's got plus and minus 15 volts. This blue waveform is all nice and smooth. It's clean. It sounds great. But I've got a voltage problem in my vehicle. I've got, inferior power wire. The alternator can't keep up very quickly. And of course, the battery's running out of power if you don't have battery juice. So this 15 volts, it can start to sag. And that's what you hear when you hear amplifiers sagging. What if this drops down to plus 10 and minus 10 volts? Well, at that point, our voltage rails are going to collapse. So now, if we look at this line again, what once was a clean signal that the amplifier could produce is now being clipped. So it doesn't matter if your amplifier cannot produce enough power or if you don't have enough power going to the amplifier. Blowing up your speakers is still a factor of not enough power. Well, what happens if we get too much power? So let's go back to this and take off our little drawings here. Hopefully I can get all this back out of here. Here we go. So if I want this waveform, if I really want, it's also hard drawing this with one arm in a sling. So I would like to have it travel to that waveform. What I've got to do, Jacob, as you probably know, I need a bigger amplifier, right? Mm-hmm. So I got an amplifier that's plus and minus 40 volts. This signal is now clean. You don't have to worry about the distortion damaging the speaker. But what do you think's happened to the speaker at that point? It's being pushed farther. So while it's not distorted, it's not clipping, we're not developing heat, we have pushed the speaker to its physical mechanical limits. And this is what you call bottoming out a speaker, or basically overdriving a speaker. Too much power is going to damage the suspension of the speaker. It's going to tear the surrounds, it's going to tear the spider, it's going to break other parts of the speaker, it's going to bottom out. The very early Kicker speakers, when we first introduced the separates back in 1986, Steve figured out, hey, if I put a bumped backplate on the speaker, that's the little bump right around where that vent is in the center of a lot of the speakers. If I make that backplate so the speaker can travel farther without hitting it, it's not going to bottom out and make that nasty noise. So people would run the rated power to the speaker, it wouldn't bottom out, it sounded great, so what do you think they did? Put more power to it. So at that point, it got to the point where the suspension wasn't bottoming out, but the tinsel leads were not made long enough to travel because didn't expect people to do that. So we found the next weak link in the chain. And that's the whole evolution of speakers, is finding the weak link and making it stronger. So, of course, then we had to increase the length of the tinsel leads. What's really interesting is almost all our woofers use the exact same wire. So it's 425-degree wire. But what happens is the speakers handle different amounts of power because of the way they dissipate the heat. But this is what happens to a speaker when you run too much power to it. You physically push it too far and you damage the mechanical aspects of the speaker, or it just sounds so bad that you can't tolerate it. Mm-hmm. Now, if the speaker is mechanically dampened, so the speaker can't move, if it was in a free air application, it would provide that push and pull smoothly. But if you constrict the movement of that speaker, like mechanically by holding the cone still, or if you jam it up against the back seat of the car, this is how you can have the right amount of power and not a clip signal going into the speaker, but still blow the speaker. Mm-hmm. So you haven't overpowered it, you haven't underpowered it, but you haven't allowed it to do its job. It's physical. It's like taking an electric motor. You guys probably mess with screw guns and, got starters in your cars, same thing. If you take that screw gun, you can operate it, pretty much forever if it's allowed to, turn freely. But if you completely lock that screw gun up, hold on to it so it can't turn, and pull the trigger, all you're doing is dumping energy into the coils of the motor, which basically like the voice coils of a speaker. You're doing nothing but creating heat and energy in the windings of that motor. You're going to burn it out. But you let go of it, it starts to rotate, it's going to start to cool down again. So that is how you end up burning up speakers. It's really interesting, and it's kind of a tough thing to grasp when you think about it. It's like, yeah, almost 95% of the time, burnt up speakers are burned up because of not enough power. Now, there's a few times where you have too much power, but the speaker can't move. I'm talking severe SPL applications, where some of these guys have got such small chambers behind the speakers, and they're dumping tons of power into these speakers. The speaker can't physically move to dissipate or, basically allow that energy to be turned into motion. But we're talking SPL vehicles. They're usually not playing these for, minutes or hours at a time. So that heat buildup doesn't happen as quickly. The voice coil can dissipate the heat, and it works great. So I hope that answers some questions about how speakers blow. In fact, while I'm looking up the clock here, we do have about 6 more minutes. If you guys haven't registered to win tonight's prizes, make sure you do that. So I'm going to ask Jeremy before we switch modes here, and while we still have this board up on display so I can do some more drawing and illustrations, does anybody have any good questions out there? Does this make sense? I think pull up questions. Steven16 says, can you blow in a subwoofer even if you don't clip? Yes, we just mentioned that. If you physically stop the speaker from moving, even without a clip signal, you're essentially clipping the motion of the speaker, right? So the speaker's still getting energy, but you're not allowing the energy to move the cone. So yes, you can clip a speaker, and I've seen that with speakers behind the cab of a pickup, the back seat rubbing up against it if they don't have speaker grills. And that can do some really weird things to speakers too.
Yeah, if it doesn't cause the coil to overheat, it can cause mechanical damage to the sub too. Like rubbing through the surround or puncturing a hole through the cone.
Cracking the cone, so you can still, and that's some of the few exceptions that we get turned back into speakers that aren't blown voice coils. Is we do occasionally get speakers that are mechanically damaged, and guess what? That's not covered by warranty.
Nope.
Neither are screw gun slips. Yeah, we do not install holes in the surround right next to the mounting hole. I've seen that. Hey, we took the speaker out of the box and it already had a hole in it. Probably not. So just one of those things. But talking about voice coils and burn voice coils, you start off with, and I'm not sure if you guys are going to be able to see this. I think I forgot to warn them we're going to pull these out. But what I have here in my hand is a normal copper voice coil. So this is a speaker that was turned back in and probably no problem found. And most of the time, we can't tell if a speaker has a problem until we cut it apart. We physically take the speaker and cut it apart. We should do that one of these days on the show.
Yeah, why not? We got some in warranty we can take up here and show you guys.
Not only that, so we know people in warranty, we burn them up. But that's a good voice coil. So talking about voice coils and windings, there's different things, and we talk about breaking in speakers, and this is actually a completely different subject. But what I'm going to do now is we're going to talk about why that there's times when you want to break in speakers. So let's see if we can get this to delete. All right, so we're going to delete that. Ernie, go back to my tablet if you don't mind. So there's a couple different things that we have with voice coils, and I'm not sure what's going on in the middle. That's crazy. So if we take voice coil windings, we have round. Stop that. Now you know why I hate the tablet, why we do this live. You breathe on this thing. All right. I really don't know why that's doing that.
It wants you to buy something, John.
Yeah, it's not allowing me to draw anything. So, all right, let's try this again. All right, so Ernie says completely get out of the app and restart it, so. Yeah, let's. All right. So, nope. So this is why I don't own an Apple, and it's definitely why we do things live and still.
Drag down in the middle of the screen. Drag down the middle. Now, hold your finger on close.
Delete. Oh, nope. Don't want to delete it. You gotta love this, guys, and it is live. Hey, we got plenty of time to kill tonight.
I'm just watching them struggle.
Yeah, it's all a lot of fun. So Ernie's probably gonna have to come up here and do this because I've got this thing so screwed up now. It's
Killing me, Smalls.
make it go away, make it quit.
Now, can Ernie do it is the question.
By the way, if you guys didn't know, this is Ernie. So what do you think, Ernie? Can we try it again?
Restart the app.
All right. So let's, where were we? We're at voice coils, weren't we?
Subwoofer break-in, John.
Subwoofer break-in. Back when we introduced the solo barracks, back in 1992, we were recommended a break-in period of time because speakers are mechanical. They have suspension, so the suspension's going to break in over time. But more importantly, something happened with the voice coils, and this was the real issue why we almost insisted you did a break-in period on those speakers. Nope, that didn't do it. It just will not let me draw anything anymore.
Roll up on that, see if it wants you to do something.
All right, so it's probably asking me to buy the app.
Well, I think we can explain it without it.
I think we're going to have to. So what happens with voice coils, with round wire, just like speakers, as you put them together, the wire actually has gaps in between the windings. So you put circles together, there's always spaces in the middle. So with flat wound wire, which is like bricks, like if you're laying bricks, they actually overlap. There's very little space in between. So the wire can't touch. So the copper itself cannot touch as it's being wound as a voice coil. So there's a laminate on the wire. So each winding is independent that doesn't short off to the one next to it. So when you laminate the wire and when you make a voice coil, they actually are put in an oven and they're baked to cure that laminate on the wire. Well, as they do that, like anything else, when something dries, it degasses. There's some fumes that emit from that, and it's basically like steam. I mean, you can power ocean liners with steam pressure. Same thing happens with voice coils. With round wire voice coils, that pressure is allowed to escape between the windings of the copper wire. With the flat wound wire, which can be flat wound or edge wound, so it can be wound vertical or it can be wound flat, and then they're stacked on top of each other, there isn't room for that gas to get out of the windings. So what'll happen is the former here, which we use a Kapton former, and the reason we use Kapton is Kapton will expand and contract as it heats at the same rate that copper does, which is kind of cool because you don't think about that. As that voice coil gets hotter, it's going to get bigger. If the former did not follow the same heating and cooling expansion, it would actually pull it or loosen it from the former, and then you get what they call a shucked voice coil. So the voice coil actually comes off the former. It's not blown, but it's come off. And I've seen speakers that have done that in the past where the entire voice coil comes off. So with the Kapton, since it heats and expands exactly at the same rate as copper, if that gas is not allowed to escape, it would actually bubble or blister the inside of this former, and it would rub on the pole piece of the speaker, and it would sound like the speaker was blown. Sometimes you could let the speaker sit overnight, and that gas would escape eventually, and the speaker would be fine. But more than likely, these things were made at such a tight tolerance that that bubble inside would actually stay there, and the speaker was pretty much ruined. Even though you didn't overpower it or underpower it, you ran good, clean power to it, but the windings just didn't get a chance to let that pressure escape. So that's called a degas voice coil. But that's a good voice coil right there. We don't use paper because paper doesn't expand. And aluminum is a little different too. Aluminum actually expands more than copper does. So aluminum, you actually have to have some type of relief so it doesn't try to buckle inside the copper windings. So let's go to a little different winding. Let's go to a speaker here. I don't know if you can see the color of this. In fact, I think I'm going to hold this up in front of a piece of paper, see if that will allow it to. So you can see the difference there, if you can zoom in on that. Guys, this one's got a little dark color right in the middle, which is really interesting to me because usually speakers, what will happen with the voice coils, they actually burn on the top and the bottom. The reason they burn more on the top and the bottom is because right in the middle is where the top plate of the speaker rides, and that's where it pulls heat away from the voice coil from the top plate. So a speaker that does not have an extended pole piece will actually burn the top of the voice coil first. So this one is not damaged. This speaker it got a little warm. We've discolored the copper on the voice coil, but we haven't destroyed it. So that's kind of the first phase when you start smelling that unique smell, that capped on voice coil smell. That's a pretty good indication that, you're running it a little bit too hard. Excuse me. Not only is it cold here, it's dry. This one's just a little bit darker. So this one they've abused just a little bit more. Still, nothing's happened to the voice coil. There's no buckles on the former. It wasn't rubbing. So this speaker still probably was good. I mean, that's not going to change a whole lot until you start, burning through windings or, shorting through the lamination. But something else I forgot to talk about when we're talking about speakers like in boxes, like speakers. Everyone assumes every speaker is exactly the same. Those two speakers are 100% the same, right? No, they're not. They're as close as we can make them. But the point I want to make there is if all speakers, produced in the same run were exactly alike, when you have two speakers in an enclosure and you have something that damages them, say clipping or something else, both of them are going to be bad. But more times than not, we get one speaker that's bad and not the other one. So that's why speakers are subtly different, and that's the other reason why I always recommend separate chambers, either sealed or ported, for your speakers. So you have one box, but have separate chambers for each one because they're not all exactly identical. So let's go a little farther, Jacob. Let's look at this one here. So this voice coil, as we talked about before, it's burned on the top, which is where they have the least cooling on most speakers without an extended pole piece. This one has delaminated the voice coil.
Yeah, it's come unwound.
So it's got so hot that we actually have windings that are actually coming off of this voice coil. There's actually debris falling off on the paper. So that speaker's definitely blown and that one's abused. And it goes even farther. I've got another bigger one. Here's another one that's at the first stages of that, where it's actually starting to delaminate that coil. So that's what happens when you blow a speaker, and when they rattle, you get the windings actually will either start rubbing on the pole piece or the center plate, and the windings will get so hot they'll actually burn off of the former, and the lamination will actually flake off, and it can actually short the windings together when that lamination on the wire flakes off. So,
something else, the former is a little bit deformed inside of that too. You can see
you can see the reflections there. That's part of that degassing we talked about. I've talked to people that literally, and dealers that call up, say, yeah, my customer left the store, came back 10 minutes later, and both his speakers were locked up solid. Well, that can be, obviously, it's an abuse issue, but that can be both the inner former having distortions in it from not allowing that gas to escape quick enough by just railing the amplifier wide open, and it can also be from the voice coil windings actually coming off. Most of the time we can rebuild speakers that are blown. It's not cost effective to do a lot of them anymore, but we used to rebuild almost all the speakers we make. Now we pretty much only rebuild the cast basket because the cost of speakers, has really gone down, and it isn't worth the time it takes to rebuild one anymore versus the cost of the materials and the time. But there were times that we could even rebuild the older speakers of the cast basket when those windings come off and they're actually locked down inside that voice coil gap and we can't get the copper out. That speaker's pretty much done because obviously you don't want any debris down in that gap. So that's when we start talking about blown speakers. So anybody else got any good questions? I got Jeremy back here on the camera back here. Jeremy, I don't think we're going to make you zoom in, real quick or tight anymore. So Ernie, do we have anybody else asking some good questions? So JXKE says, hope you guys address playing below tuning. A lot of people don't understand subsonic limits. Good point. And what he's talking about is playing a speaker below its tuning frequency or below, a really, really low subsonic frequency, like, 25 hertz, 20 hertz, 15 hertz, 10 hertz, 5 hertz, and that's hertz or vibrations per second. Same thing happens, exactly what we were talking about. If you try to play a speaker too far below its operating frequency, like a really low frequency, you're putting a lot of energy into a speaker and you're making it move very slow in purpose. And once again, it's like holding your foot on the gas pedal and the brake at the same time. You're putting the energy into the speaker, and the energy's going in. The speaker is moving, but you're using the energy to hold the speaker mechanically in place rather than moving in a smooth motion, because the speaker is basically a spring. It wants to basically move in and out at a specific frequency, and that's called the resonant frequency. So above the resonant frequency, when the speaker can't move because it's just too large, you're putting energy into it, and the speaker is not moving, so it's producing heat, so that can burn a speaker. The other problem is when you're playing at too low of a frequency and you're physically forcing that speaker to move slow but dumping a ton of energy into it. Not only that, as you go lower in frequency, you demand more power from the amplifier and you have to push the speaker farther. When you cut the frequency in half, if we go from 40 hertz to 20 hertz, the speaker's going to have to move 4 times farther, and it's going to require 4 times more power. And if it can't do that, it's going to clip the amplifier, it's going to distort and burn up the speaker. So if you had enough power, if you had that extra 4 times power, basically mechanically you're going to push the speaker beyond its limits and tear it up that way. So there's limits both ways, and that's one of the things the enclosure does. The enclosure will actually help stop the speaker from traveling too far and tearing itself apart, but that's why there's displacement limited power handling. So there's a lot of, minor areas of gray area, but when it comes to physically burning up and blowing speakers, if you're burning them up one way or another, you just don't have enough power unless you're in that 5% that you have the power that the speaker's not physically able to move, whether you're playing too low or too high in the resonant frequency or it's up against something solid and can't move. So great question. I appreciate you asking that. Anybody else got a good question? Guys, Stu's Custom Shop says, what are some audible signals that your speaker is over or underpowered? Well, you're going to hear distortion, and that's exactly what we hear. We're going to let you hear that tonight. We've got 2 speakers set up here. Unfortunately, Stu's Custom Shop, you're going to hear more than you probably want to hear. Because when we do this demonstration, it's not going to be an instant demonstration. We're going to have to let this play to really show you the differences. But we're going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have Jacob turn these on. I'm going to have him play one speaker just real quickly without any distortion with a sine wave, and he's going to play the other speaker with a square wave. What we've done for this demonstration is we've gone in and we've got a signal generator that has 2 separate channels of output. We've got a 4-channel amplifier. Why a 4-channel amplifier? Because we can set the gains for both outputs, amp 1 and amp 2. We can match the gains perfectly, which is what we've done. So we've got exactly the same voltage output going to the speakers, but one is going to get a clean sine wave, the other one is going to get a square wave, and you're going to hear the difference, and we're going to put up a thermal camera on these speakers and let them play for at least a minute, and we're going to show you what happens to the temperature of the speakers that get a clean sine wave and get a square wave with the exact same voltage going into them. But remember, when you get to a bigger amplifier, and without having the tablet up here, you guys remember we talked about those voltage rails. If you want to get a louder speaker, you put a bigger amplifier on it, it pushes the speaker farther. Well, here's one problem. Having more power is a double-edged sword. So having more power will allow you to push the speaker farther in and out, but if you clip a bigger amplifier, guess what?
It's going to burn it up quicker.
It's got more destructive power, so that's that double-edged sword. Bigger amp will allow you to play it louder, but if you push that amp beyond its limit, it's got even more destructive power and can damage the speaker even quicker. So basically it comes out to user finesse. Set your systems up right, use your ears. If you hear something distorted, that square wave we talked about, it basically is distortion. Music isn't clean and natural sounding, it's kind of fuzzy. Now on a sine wave, when we play an exact tone, you'll hear very, very distinctly when they go to clipping. It's really dramatic. The total sound of the speaker changes. So with just a pure sine wave, you can actually hear clipping the instant it starts to clip. With your ears, you will not hear distortion with a dynamic source with music. You cannot hear distortion. So setting your gains by ear, the way we did it, way back in the past, is not the best way to do it. The best ways to set your gain are with an oscilloscope and a sine wave, with some type of distortion indicator like the SMD1 or the amplifiers that have the clipping indicator on the dials like ours do, or you can set the gain of an amplifier by voltage. So if you know the actual rated output of the amplifier, and you have to assume the amplifier will produce rated output, and a lot of them don't. And I know if you guys watch Big D's videos, a lot of these amplifiers do not make rated power, not even close. But if you know the amplifier can make rated power, and you go to the rating, you can actually set the amplifier by using voltage. So if you know the thing's, got a 10 volt swing peak to peak. So the amplifier can produce a 10 volt signal peak to peak. Multiply 10 by 10, so 10 squared is 100. So that's 100 volts divided by the impedance. Put that on a 4 ohm speaker. 100 divided by 4 is 25 watts. So 10 volts peak to peak is equivalent to 25 watts. So we know if we have a 25 watt amplifier, I can set the output sine wave to 10 volts with an AC voltmeter, and I've set the amplifier's gain perfectly without having to use an oscilloscope. But you gotta have an amplifier that you know does rated power. Any more good questions? Guys, we really appreciate you tuning in. Danny Arelina, I think that's how you pronounce that. Once again, I destroy names. Can I blow a subwoofer that hasn't been broken in if it's an enclosure with the subwoofer that has been broken in? Actually, no. What's going to happen, they're going to sound a little different. Especially, we talked about making sure that the speakers are in their own separate chambers. But even if they're in a common chamber, if one is broken in and the other one isn't, they're going to have different movement. There's going to be a little bit of cancellation between them, but you're not going to physically cause either one of those speakers to blow. They're still going to perform. They're still going to perform right. They're just going to have a little different sound to them till the other speaker catches up. And most speakers get to a certain point of break-in where that's the suspension is loosened up as much as they can. But that's what a break-in on a speaker does, is it actually breaks in the suspension, it softens it up, and you guys have probably noticed, with the speaker, you get a brand new speaker, and the bass is really tight and it's really punchy. After a little bit of while, it starts to sound really smooth and deep, and actually sounds, in my opinion, a little bit better. That means that speaker's broken in, and it's not going to continue to change over time. It just gets to a certain point, and that's where it's going to stop loosening up the suspension and tuning it lower. So, another great question, Danny. I appreciate that one. Who we got next? Star Fox says, how can I get deeper mid-bass for my 6.5 components? I put sound deadening in my doors. I'm running the RMS power to them. I feel like other cars have deeper bass even from their stock door speakers. That's a great question. When it comes to mid-bass, and I love mid-bass. I mean, that's the one area that I think car audio lacks the most. Sub-bass is easy. Put a huge box and a lot of power. You got a great sub-bass, mid-range, treble, tweeters. That's great. But mid-bass is a lot trickier. So you've done the right thing. You can't put too much sound dampening material in your doors and on your doors. As much. I mean, the last car I did, I think I had about 200 pounds of hush mat in it. Not kidding. And that car sounded phenomenal. But the key to mid-bass, to get good mid-bass, is deaden panels, which you've got. Both the metal, what I'll do is I'll deaden the outer door skin, the metal on the outside of the door, on the backside of the painted part. I'll do the metal door frame, the part the speaker's actually attached to, and I'll do the door panel to make sure nothing vibrates. And don't forget fast rings. Sealing the speaker so the sound does not get between the speaker and the door panel. That's another area where you lose a critical amount of mid-bass. Mid-bass wants that pressure, and if that is allowed to dissipate, behind the door panel, you don't get that mid-bass attack. But the big key to mid-bass is cone area and power again. So a bigger speaker, like a 6x9, a lot of these cars are running 6x9s in the doors, incredible mid-bass. Even the stock speakers have great mid-bass. They just don't have as good sub-bass. That's why you put a subwoofer with them. But yeah, for good mid-bass, cone area, power, and a lot of dampening and fast rings. And if you guys don't know what fast rings are, they're foam rings that go around the circumference of the speaker that seal it up to the door. A quick, easy way to make your own fast rings is go to the hardware store and go to the heating and air conditioning department, get some of the foam that you put them. They make foam that's actually 2 inches square. You actually take that and you can wrap that around the speaker, cut it to length, glue the ends, and attach it to the door around the speaker. And that's actually what I did in my Mustang, exactly that, with that 2-inch square foam insulation to seal them to the doors. So great question. Who else is out there? I see Andy's out there, 25 hertz delays. I saw Bobby Burkett was out there. Morris Attaway. What's Morris's question there, Jacob? What's he want to say?
He's asking if you can use too much polyfill. Is that possible?
Here again, another interesting question. I really like these good questions.
Yeah.
So, what's polyfill do? I mean, polyfill, you know what polyfill does, right?
Oh yeah, it kind of, the way that I describe it is it makes your subwoofer sound a little bit deeper, almost like you've got a larger box. So
exactly, and that's what polyfill does. It actually slows down the shock wave inside the enclosure on a subwoofer enclosure. It actually tunes a bit lower. Almost every one of our pre-made loaded enclosures, with the exception of one of the TCWRT truck enclosures, I think the 8-inch, I think that's the only enclosure we sell that doesn't have polyfill on it, and for some reason that one just didn't need it. They listened to it both ways and, hey, it sounds great without it. But what polyfill will do is it slows down the air inside the speaker enclosure, and it makes the speaker think it's in a bigger enclosure because the air takes longer to go through the enclosure, hit the wall, and reflect. And same thing with a ported enclosure. It takes longer to get through the enclosure to the port, so it makes the box look bigger. Well, anytime you tune a speaker lower and smoother, you lose a little bit of the output. So it's always the trade-off again. You've got, output versus low frequency. You want more low frequency, you're going to sacrifice a little bit of output. So it's kind of a trade-off. So some people like, polyfill because they like the really deep, smooth sound. Some people want it as loud as possible. The question is, can you use too much polyfill? And yes.
Yes, you can.
You get to a point where you go backwards.
Yeah. What I always recommended when I was in tech support is about 1 pound of polyfill per cubic foot in your enclosure.
So what if you don't have a scale?
Well, I don't know. You can guess, I suppose. The bag will usually say like so many ounces or so many pounds, whatever, when you buy it. So you can just estimate.
See, I don't even read the bag, so.
Or just throw it in and listen to it. And if you like how it sounds, keep it. If you want to change it, throw some more in. Just unscrew the subwoofer, throw some polyfill in, and try it again.
Yep, remember, there is no right or wrong, and these changes are going to be subtle. I mean, they may be noticeable, may not be. One of the problems with using too much polyfill is, here again, you can really detune a ported box, to the point where you're completely through the box out of balance. With the sealed box with too much polyfill, it actually starts taking up so much airspace that the speaker can't move any longer. So you go from tuning it to lower, then you go back with you start putting too much in, and it actually starts tuning it higher again. So another recommendation I've always done over the years, and there is no right or wrong. It's whatever works for you. That's why I asked you, how much is a pound? So what I normally do, and this is just what's worked for me and my own personal taste, is I take whatever the physical volume of the polyfill is, and I'll just pull it apart and double it. So you're not increasing the weight or anything, you're just basically stretching that amount, double its area, and that seems to work pretty well too. Then it's a pretty good indicator that, hey, that's going to be about as good as you're going to get. So great question on polyfill, which can you blow speakers with polyfill? Well, once again, if you stuff the box so tight it can't move, yeah. So like I say, guys, there's gray areas in everything. There's not just cut and dried, you always have this problem or you always don't have this problem. There's always some factors in there that, that combine together. It's like stacked tolerances when you start doing, production. So
John
cool.
Drew's got a good question. What weighs more, 100 pounds of polyfill or 100 pounds of subs?
I don't know. I think 100 pounds is 100 pounds. Yeah. What color was Custer's white horse? One of those questions.
Yeah.
So that's another one of the trivia questions I ask in my trainings, and talking about power, and you kind of reminded me, which is louder, 1,000 watts at 1 ohm or 1,000 watts at 4 ohms? It's 1,000 watts. There is no difference in output. It's just a difference at what impedance it's producing, that 1,000 watts. Wattage is work. It's power produced. It's accomplishing something. So the same amount of power is the same amount of power. So what's the difference between 1 ohm and 4 ohm? Well, at the same power, nothing. But the difference between 1 ohm and 4 ohm as far as sound quality is at 1 ohm, you got less control over the speaker, so the damping is less. So you have the same output, but a little less control over it. That's why I tell people there's really no huge advantage to running at 1 ohm. And you see this all the time. In fact, almost all of our subwoofer amplifiers are 1 ohm stable because you guys, hey, we have to have a 1 ohm stable amplifier. Guess what? You don't. I try to wire things high impedance as possible. The last sound quality car I built, I ran the subs at 4 ohms. And you talk about tight, clean bass. And those were 12-inch L7S woofers in 2.5 cubic foot. Still at 900 watts rated power. There were CXA 1800 ones run at 4 ohms. Man, that car sounded good. I've run subs at 8 ohms before in cars. I mean, it's 3 dB difference, which is the smallest amount you can hear, but the quality of the sound makes a huge difference. And that's why, especially like, your coaxes and components, mids and tweeters, they're always generally 4 or 8 ohms because they're going to have better dampening, better control. Or woofers, you can't hear the distortion, so you can get by with a little bit more distortion in a woofer. Just, once again, setting gains, you can't do it with your ear. You're never going to hear the distortion when it actually starts to happen. I mean, 25% distortion you probably couldn't even hear with your ears through a subwoofer. So great questions. I kind of look up here and see if there's Saber. Saber, thanks for joining us tonight. I know I've reached out to you a couple times this week with some of your questions. Who else we got up here that's got some good questions? Andy's still dialing in there. Stu's Custom. Saber says, how do you blow one of the voice coils and not the other in a dual voice coil sub? That's kind of an interesting question. First of all, you don't know if you've only blown one coil because they are actually wound at the same time. What happens with these voice coils, and all these are dual voice coils, you don't wind one voice coil on the bottom and one on the top. The voice coil winds are actually both wound together at the same time. They actually overlap. So, you really can't tell if you've blown one voice coil or the other. But what can happen as far as burning them, but opening up a coil, you can have one coil that opens and not the other one that opens, and that can be a couple different issues. One can be a tensile lead problem. So the lead going from the terminal to the speaker, one of the tensile leads can break. That's going to open up the one coil. Or we talked about when they get to this point, if you get one of the windings that burns through on one coil but not the other one for some weird reason, it just happens you got one that burns through and not the other one, that's the other way you can burn up just one voice coil of a dual voice coil speaker. But it all comes down to still the same problem. If you're breaking the tensile leads, you're probably pushing the speaker too far. That's another indication you have too much power. You don't have the right size enclosure, or you're running a ported enclosure infinite baffle without a subsonic filter. We're talking about running the really low frequencies and pushing that speaker too far. So, cool, great questions. We're going to keep them rolling in here. And Narad, I can't even pronounce that, I'm sorry. Jacob, how do you pronounce that?
I would say Narad.
Narad Zitnil?
Zitnil.
Do you have less impedance rise with wiring ohm loads higher? Impedance rise is something really interesting that it really doesn't have to do with winding the higher. I mean, if you start at a higher impedance, you're going to get more impedance rise just because it's going to be a factor of. But the big thing that affects impedance rise is type of enclosure and size of enclosure. That's going to affect how much impedance rise you have and where it is. So it's not so much the winding of the speaker. Now, if you got a 2 ohm speaker versus a 4 ohm speaker, the impedance rise on a 4 ohm is going to be higher, but it's going to be a factor of. So even though it might be a lot different, it's still the same factor. If you got impedance rise of 4 times on a 2 ohm speaker, it's going to be 4 times 2 is going to be 8. But if you have an 8 ohm speaker and it's 4 times, that's 32. So there's 24, ohms difference in the two, even though it is the same factor. So that's kind of an interesting question, not an easy one to answer. But hopefully I answered that right for you. Hopefully that made sense. And you're clear as mud, right, Jacob?
Clear as mud, exactly.
I've got 8:26, so we're doing pretty good tonight. We had a lot of good questions. Hopefully you guys have had a lot of fun. Looks like we got a fair amount of people still tuned in tonight. We still got stuff to give away. Our demonstration.
Yeah, we still have our demonstrations, John.
So why don't we do that? So first of all, we're going to do 2 demonstrations tonight. We're going to go ahead and turn these speakers on, and I'm going to go ahead and step out of the way. I'm going to let Jacob jump in and do this since he's got it all dialed in. So we're going to play this KXMA 404, which is bridged to 200 watts per channel into 4 ohms. So each channel, or in fact, we actually have these speakers wired stereo.
Yeah,
so we're getting 100 watts to each voice coil since we're running them at 50 watts per channel. So that's what this amplifier is going to do. And we're let you going to hear what 100 watts sounds like with a sine wave. And what frequency are you running?
60
hertz.
Yep.
So basically the frequency that comes out of a wall socket. So what I want you to do is, because I don't want to throw this demonstration off too much, is I want you to play for about 3 seconds, play the speaker, that's not getting the clip sine wave, play it, then turn the speaker on that is getting the sine wave. And once again, that's exactly the same voltage. We've matched the outputs. So the only difference is one is a square wave, one is a sine wave. So go ahead and turn the speaker on with the sine wave first. And then we're going to turn on the speaker with the square wave. We're going to add it to it, and you're going to hear what a difference in sound it makes. And we're going to let this run for about a minute. And we're going to actually have Ernie go ahead and play a video or two while we let this run. And we have a thermal camera that's going to be focused on these two speakers. And you're going to see the center of the speakers start to change color. The brighter the image you see, the warmer it's going to be. And Jacob's actually going to move the camera and tell you exactly what the temperature is. So we're going to show you the difference in the temperature voice coil rise between sine wave and square wave. So I'm going to stand up and get out of his way.
So you just want me to blip these for him, John,
Yep.
real quick?
I'm going to trade places with you.
All right.
So go ahead and turn the speaker on with the sine wave first.
Okay, so I've got this one disconnected. This one has the square wave.
This speaker's going to get the square wave. This one gets the sine wave. We're going to play this speaker with just the sine wave for about 3 seconds.
Yeah, so I don't know how well this is going to show up on a mic or like a phone or something.
Probably going to distort, but
yeah.
you'll still hear the difference.
We'll try it anyway. Just a warning, I'm going to start.
That's not bad.
No, it's pretty quiet, right?
Yep. All right, so that was a sine wave at a specific voltage, and we're running, what, 7 volts out on that?
Yeah, so we've got 7 volts out on both channels, 60 hertz on both channels. The only difference is that one is a sine wave and one is a square wave. And again, I've came in here and I equalized the outputs on this 4 channel, so we have the same output voltage going to both subwoofers. So again, the only difference is that one is a square wave and one is a sine wave.
Now, you're going to hear an audible volume difference because that's the cone distortion is actually producing its own volume. So you're going to hear the difference in sound, and you're going to hear a perceived difference in output. So turn this one on quick and then add this one.
All right.
Now just turn them both on. They heard what that sounded like. We can't turn one channel on and off on
Yeah,
this.
and I can't ask you to disconnect that with your, here, let me do it real quick. I'll just go ahead and undo the coils.
Oh, I can get this one. Hopefully I'll be back to 100% soon. So this is square wave. Same speaker, same power. All right. So audibly that sounds completely different, and it sounded nasty in my opinion.
Yeah,
so that is clipping or
good.
square wave. The amplifier's not clipping, but we're clipping the input signal. It's the same thing. So, Ernie, are you ready back there to run a video while we turn this thing on and let it play?
We're going to heat the subs up, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
we're going to heat the subs up.
Let's go ahead and let's get the thermal camera fired up, and I'm going to put that.
All right.
And then I'll put that in the window while we're running the video.
So Jacob is turning on the thermal camera. Ernie's going to put that in the window for us. So you're going to actually see, well, you'll probably see me at lighter color than everything else when the thermal camera comes on.
All right, camera's on.
All right, so go ahead and switch the camera to the thermal, Ernie, so they can get an idea. There it is. So you see me, that's me here, and you see the 2 dark circles in front of me. That is the speakers. So we're going to go ahead and turn this on with the sine wave and the square wave at the same exact voltage, and we're going to let it play while we go to a commercial, and you're going to be able to see what the speakers do if you're able to zoom in on that. So go ahead and fire it up there,
Yeah,
Jacob.
so you guys remember, the one that John is behind right here, this is the sine wave speaker, and this one is the square wave. So as you watch, notice which one the camera picks up having the hot spot.
And hopefully you're going to see enough difference in a minute. So let her rip.
Yep.
Guys, we'll be back in just a minute or so. So here we go.
Something bad, your hands on the wheel, got a sexy touch. It's enough to make me and my Chevy blush so long. Take it all off of that highway, turn me on, I'll let you drive, babe. You can take it fast as you want to. Girl, little dirty looks damn good on you. Start me up, Stones on the radio. Girl, I love it when you let go. Don't waste your way in the wrong way. Get out on 4x4 play.
All right.
Okay, so that should have given us enough heat to show a difference. So if you guys look, the one that had the square wave is showing up as having the hot spot. So I'm going to move it so now that it shows the temperature of the one that had the sine wave.
So it's at 27.4.
27.4 on the cone of the subwoofer with the sine wave, and we're at 29.5 on the subwoofer with the square wave. So already in that short period of time, there's about a 2°C difference.
And that's huge in that short amount of time that those were playing.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this isn't even showing you the actual voice coil temperature. This is just the temperature of the cone of the subwoofer where some of the heat is getting transferred to.
Yeah, and that's, the voice coil is actually buried within there. So once again, you guys have felt speakers where the front of the speaker is warm. Well, that's because that heat being transferred from the voice coil. So I hope we've made our point here to you guys that it is not power that builds the heat up in the speaker. It is distortion and clipping. So pretty cool, I think. You know what we ought to do, Ernie and Jake, we ought to actually do a video, do a time-lapse video at some point and post it up and just let this thing run. Just to see how much of a difference it gets. But,
Yeah.
But that is your difference between sine wave and square wave. Square wave, it's got more power under the curve. We start talking about calculus, calculating, the area under a curve. It's a square wave, so it's got more area, but it's all destructive area. So it's doing nothing but creating heat in that voice coil. So that's why we tell you guys, if you're burning up your speakers, you have too little power, and if you're physically tearing them apart, you have too much power. I think we need to show them what too much power sounds like, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next little demonstration, do you remember which output was sine wave and which was square wave?
No, not at the amplifier, but we can make whichever one.
Yeah,
the one
we'll
that
make
we
it work
want,
that
so.
way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and disconnect all the speakers.
So the gray is going to be our sine wave coming in.
They're both gray.
Oh yeah, never mind. Well, I don't know.
All right, so we could have done it there too, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this poor little 4x6 speaker, and we're going to put 200 watts to it.
Yeah.
Thermal camera on that, Jacob.
Yeah. Let's do it. Why not?
Why not? I'll even hold it. This thing is not going to survive. Duh. But I want you to hear what too much power sounds like. That's kind of the main point of doing this. But we're going to run into that same problem where even though it's not clip power, it's clean power, we're hitting the mechanical limits of the speaker with a whole lot of power going to it.
Point it towards that.
That's what I'm going to do.
So I now have this bridge to the amplifier. Is this going to work? And I want to go to amplitude, and I want to turn it down.
It's okay, you can just move the whole thing.
Oh, that's right.
Just move the whole thing over there.
Oh, there goes my screw.
Guess what? That was a lot of output.
Sounded like John's Chipotle came back and
So that was a speaker bottoming out. Now, I thought that I turned that down, but apparently, that's channel 1. So we're going to go to channel 2.
or just unplug one RCA and switch it to whichever one has the sine wave.
All right, go to amplitude. See what happens when we get equipment that you haven't messed with?
There it goes.
So there we are. So this speaker is getting 60 hertz sine wave. I can't tell you how much power that is. Got a bad connection here, but as I turn it up farther, if you can hear the suspension reaching its limits. Not clipped. Not clipped, but you're hearing mechanical limits of the speaker. That's the suspension being pulled tight, kind of like snapping a belt. Now let's go to mechanical absolute bottoming it out. And that's bottoming the speaker out.
It's actually taken quite a bit.
The point I wanted to make is we were mechanically driving that speaker way beyond its limit, but we didn't burn it up.
No, but I smell it.
It got warm, definitely got warm, which...
Well, look at the thermal. It's
Yeah.
just the Chipotle. Look at the thermal camera. Look at how
See if
much
I can
heat
get out of the way.
is coming out of the tweeter post on that, or close to the tweeter post.
Where's the camera?
Put it back down here, John.
It's kind of hard to see, but
Yep.
Move to your left. There you go. Move to your left. There you go. Look at that.
so it's actually picking up the center of that speaker as the hotspot instead of John.
Are you saying the speaker's hotter than I am?
Well, yeah.
Fine. I can take an insult. So yeah, like I say, it's pretty interesting when you can basically physically overdrive the speaker and it doesn't burn up to a certain point.
Now turn the gain up.
All right, guys, I want to see in the comments. Do you want to see it smoke? Should we go ahead and kill it?
Of course they do.
All right, so I'm not even going to hold it this time. We're going to see what it takes to completely cook this little 4x6 speaker with 200 watts of sine wave. That's crazy. Smoke. We did it.
There it goes.
It's always fun to blow things up.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Ernie, your lab's going to smell.
Oh, yeah, let's get this thermal can after it.
It went so quick, I still got smoke coming out of the back of it.
Let me see that, John.
Switch the camera there, Ernie. Here, just go ahead and unplug it.
Yeah, I'm going to unplug it and then try and focus this guy up close.
Yep, it definitely got warm. And you can even see the leads of the speaker got hot.
Yeah.
And that's the two knobs you see coming, two little blurbs on the right side of that. Yeah, it's pretty warm down there. What, 60 degrees? That's just the temperature of the plastic, too, and everything around it.
You can see it in comparison to my fingers. Look at the difference.
Well, it's hotter than you are, Jacob.
Hey, I can take an insult, too.
Cool. I
Hey,
hope you guys had some fun at that speaker's expense.
It won't even... It's
Yeah.
locked up completely.
Yeah, we've locked that thing up completely, so, and we did that on purpose. So I bet the tweeter probably still works.
I bet it does, yeah.
due to the crossover,
The magic of
the fact it was
crossovers.
clean. But yeah, that is the difference between clipping and unclipping, and power and not enough power. So cool. Anybody else got any questions before we move on to the next segment? So. Nope, you guys are all quiet. You guys are all speechless. So, guys, once again, thanks for tuning in for that. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to regroup, and then we're going to come back with the prizes, questions, installs, and my favorite, fails. So I'm going to turn this over completely to Jacob. He has gathered all this on his own, so not my choices, but these are all his. I'm really curious to see what he came up with what he liked. So, and hey, there's no right, no wrong. It's all personal choice. So, quick little break, and we'll be right back with questions, answers, fails, installs, and prizes. See you in a minute.
Kicker Performance Audio. For almost 50 years, we've been rocking the planet with our world-class product covering everything that drives you, whether in your car, truck, boat, motorcycle, side-by-side, or even on your head. Kicker Performance Audio's passion for bringing you your favorite music like you've never heard it before is what drives us. So wherever you need us, Kicker Performance Audio will be there for you.
We're back!
Hey, guys.
Thanks for hanging on. I know everybody wants to win something.
Laptop to the HDMI.
Huh?
Plug in that Jacob's late laptop to HDMI.
Yeah, it's
It is plugged in.
Okay.
All right. So, Jacob, why don't you take it away? Let's go for some fun stuff and give some cool stuff away.
All right, so I'm going to try and step into John's shoes for a little bit tonight, but...
Make sure you wash your feet after.
Oh, God, yeah. All right, so let's see if this is going to work for us. I've got my laptop plugged into the HDMI. We're going to see if it pulls up on the TV here, on the screen.
There we go.
Cool.
If you guys didn't see JW crawling around on the ground under the table here, apparently I pulled the connection loose.
Not surprised.
Hey!
Yeah, so...
I see an image.
So I was perusing the internet looking for some good fails to put on this on the show, and this one really caught my eye. And I was just looking to follow the wiring, because wiring fails are really common in these 12 volt 12 volt fail type things. So what instantly caught my eye was the ground wire. If you look at the bottom left, it looks like they've got some 0 gauge wire that is taped to some 4 gauge wire, running into a distribution block with some red 4 gauge wire coming out of it and going to the amp. And then they've got, looks like 0 gauge going to maybe 8 gauge wire for the power going to the amplifier. And then just all sorts of extra wires spread out all over the place. So, this is definitely not the the cleanest installation I've ever seen.
But while we're looking at that, I'm watching the comments up here, and Cassie, what is up with you and food? Every time I see your name up there, it's got food. It's like, don't burn the Bundt cookies, and I saw something about spaghetti, and I remember a couple weeks ago you had some comments about making cookies. So absolutely, Cassie, keep up the comments, and thanks for watching. So, but yeah, that's definitely just add spaghetti sauce, right?
Yeah.
What a mess. Clean wiring, guys.
And this was another good one that I saw.
Ooh.
It's like looks like 8 gauge wire that is crimped to maybe some 10 or 12 gauge wire for power, I'm guessing. It's
That's
definitely
probably 18 gauged.
You think?
It's very possible, yeah, from the looks of it.
Yeah.
It's definitely not right.
You imagine hooking that up to an amplifier. Well, that wire is going to be the first thing to go up. And I'm willing to bet there's not a fuse in there anywhere either.
That's the fusible lane right there.
Yeah.
That's the fuse right there.
I think it looks like someone crimped that with their teeth.
And finally, this last one, which isn't horrible, but I was looking at it and somebody pointed out that they took the time to cut out the speaker ring, but they didn't make it cover up.
Did a nice job.
Yeah, and it's a nice speaker ring too, but it doesn't cover up the whole hole, so that, the whole hole redundancy. But your back waves are going to come through that hole, and you have the possibility of canceling out some of your front waves with it. So
guarantee it's going to cancel.
Yeah.
Not even a possibility.
Yeah, so it's just kind of goofy. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but you took the time to cut out the speaker ring, and I wonder why they didn't cover up that hole. Maybe
How could they fix that?
They could fix it by using like some of that black PCV plastic or whatever to cover that up. It's not as thick, and I'm wondering if they didn't use that wood to cover up the rest of the hole, because maybe the panel folds over that in such a way that there wasn't enough clearance. I mean, there may have been a reason for it. I don't know, but it's just something goofy that I saw.
Definitely not a success, 100%. But it looks like they used a router to make the ring. I mean, that looks
it
pretty
looks nice.
So, and that may not be the finalized picture either, but once again, always seal the front side from the back side of the speaker. I've seen this so many times. My system doesn't sound very good, and you look at the speakers aren't even mounted. It's like they're sitting in the back window, waiting to go through the back of your head when you.
Or the tweeters are hanging from the pillars, just like they've got the wires run through the pillar and they're just dangling there. I've seen that a couple times.
I've actually seen tweeters on posts and coaxes and 6x9s where the post is broken and the tweeter's just rattling on the cone. So the speaker sounds like it's blown, but it's not. It's just the tweeter's rattling on it. Hey, super glue goes a long way.
So a couple of cool things I saw online, because we always like highlighting good work that people have done. I saw this enclosure that somebody was building, and it looked like they were doing a blow-through in a Chevy Avalanche. And
nice.
It's obviously not complete. You can see the paint looks like it's maybe still wet there. But in some of the other pictures, it looks like the construction on this box is really pretty solid.
Yeah, it looks very nice. Centrally located port, nice flares. I mean, great work on that. Beautiful enclosure.
Yeah, and that was what caught my eye, was the flares on the port and how they actually, looks like they bent the MDF or the plywood there to make it flow. It just looks really nice.
Yeah, man, it's going to help for acoustics. You don't have to worry about port noise. So
yeah.
Beautiful enclosure. And, I like the finish work. That may have been gloss gray paint too, but we're going to keep watching to see this thing actually finished. So
yeah, I'll try and follow
if you're
it.
watching tonight, if this is your vehicle, let's see some finished pictures too, which, I mean, you posted the progress. I would imagine we'll see some finished pictures.
And I tried to capture the name of the guys whose good installations that I found. So I think this one was from a guy called Audio Art, A-R-T-E. So maybe we can find them
RT.
online and RT and see what they come up with
I
later
am
on.
French. I am RT.
And then I actually pulled 2 from the same guy. I didn't realize it was the same guy until after I did it, but I got these from the Kicker Club, and they're both done by Chris Miguez, or Miguez. But anyway, this is in a vehicle that seemed to be dubbed the Hammerhead in the Kicker Club.
Oh, really?
And this was like, from what I gather, it was a SEMA vehicle that they did this installation in, and then the car got wrecked right after they finished the installation.
Oh, that's a crime.
So, but they built this really nice custom panel to mount the amps and the crossovers and the fuses on. And you can see it there on the left, and they've got this really nice subwoofer enclosure here. With 2 ports on the sides, 3 L7 tins in the middle, and there's the vehicle itself. Super cool looking. It looks
Absolutely.
Looks angry, and there's a picture of it with some LEDs at night.
Got to have your lights.
And they had Q-Class speakers in the door.
I saw the crossover, so great
Yeah.
choice of components.
Fit behind the factory panel. And there's the box before it went in the vehicle.
And once again, notice how it's symmetrical.
Yeah,
You've got a
symmetrical.
port on each end. Even though you got 3 speakers, they're probably all sharing the same airspace, but they're basically the same distance from all the ports. So if you have to share airspace, that's one of the best ways to do it.
And then this other one I thought was really cool is actually a custom Jeep. And from what I gathered from the pictures, it looks like they built a custom top for it out of like some tubular metal. But
Totally tubular.
yeah, so here's the roof.
Oh, nice.
That's the roof of the Jeep, and they have 8 km. I'm not sure what size, 6.5
Those look like
or 8s, but they have 8 km speakers firing down from the roof, and this thing was completely custom built. It's got this really nice inlay on it, pleating in the center, and there's one of our KMC source units there in the dash as well. So they've got this custom center console with custom shifter and a different steering wheel, and you can see the bars up in the front there coming down over the center console where looks like they attached it to the vehicle.
That looks like a Jeep.
Yeah, it is. It's a custom Jeep.
What were the three knobs back there? You saw the shifter, and then there were 3 other knobs. See right there in the bottom?
I'm really not sure. Maybe it's for four-wheel drive.
Okay, for the lockers and very cool install.
Looks like 2 KXMA 808s to drive everything. So that would mean that maybe he's got some. Looks like he's got some speakers bridged for 200 watts RMS per channel.
Killer amplifiers. I mean, 8 channels, bridgeable. I mean, 400 watts.
And then he's got 2 L7s and going into this enclosure in the back as well. So just the attention to detail, I didn't find any pictures of the completed subwoofer enclosure, but the attention to detail on this build was what really caught my eye, and specifically the roof and all the work that had to go into that to just make it look nice and secure. But so that's what I got for cool installations.
And guys, thanks for sending in the install pictures as you go, too. It's really cool to see the behind-the-scenes stuff. I mean, if you guys are building your own, custom vehicle, put together a little build book. Take pictures in the progress, because people really find that. I know I do, and I remember, taking cars to SEMA and CES and putting the build books out there. People really, found it fascinating to see all the work, because a lot of times that stuff is hidden under panels and you never get to see it. So if you're going to go through the effort and the work to do something really cool, take some pictures, at least have a way to show it off. Send it to us and we'll show it off for you. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And then these questions, I actually pulled a couple of the tech questions from the Kicker Club as well.
Cool.
So, saw some guys asking some things in there.
3 questions, and then we're on to prizes. So
the first question, he asked, I'm doing an SQ build, and what would sound better in a sealed box, 4 L7Q8s or 4 L7S8s? So I think all things equal airspace, I think probably the L7Q Class 8s would sound a little bit cleaner. That's just my opinion. I think that they're the better sounding subwoofer.
And to be honest, that's what it is. It's all personal opinion. There is no, 85 people can, like one over the other one, and 15% like the, there is no right or wrong. Technically the Q class are a lot heavier speaker. They're going to be deeper and smoother, but they're not going to have maybe as much output as the T. So there's always that trade-off, but there's no right or wrong. So I don't care which way you go, it's going to sound great either way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's just one of those things where I think he was probably trying to gather some opinions because he can't spend the money on 4 of each type and listen to them at a side-by-side comparison. So totally understand.
No, it's not going to be disappointed either way.
Yeah. The next question, somebody was asking if he can run a subwoofer's dual voice coils on separate channels on his amplifier. So like a left and a right on a stereo amplifier. And yeah, you can absolutely do that. That's actually what we did with these guys. We have the left and the right for amp 1 going to one and the left and the right from amp 2 going to the other. But it may not be the most efficient or the best way to do that, depending on whether your subwoofer is a dual 4 or a dual 2. So with our amplifiers that are bridgeable, you can bridge them at a 4 ohm load. So you'd be getting more power from the amplifier if you wired it in series and then bridged those outputs to the subwoofer. You'd be getting, say, for example, 200 watts RMS out of it this way. So you can, but it may not be the best way to do it. There wouldn't be a benefit.
But that would be one way, as Saber asked earlier, how can you burn just one coil? Well, that would be one way. Have the gains adjusted differently between the 2 coils. I mean,
yeah.
I forgot that. So that's a great question. That prompted another question. I told you there's so much gray area in this, and there's all these different scenarios. But that would definitely do it if you didn't have the gains matched. But usually on amplifiers, you don't have a separate left and right gain control. That's why we used the 4-channel in this demonstration, so we could match the outputs between the 2 channels exactly. So there's reasons for 2 channels, reasons for 4 channels, 8 channels, 1 channel, 5 channel, you name it.
So, and then the final question, somebody was asking, I'm replacing my factory subwoofer in my BMW with a Kicker Comp C. The factory subwoofer connections have 4 wires, and the new subwoofer only has 2 terminals. How do I hook this up? Well, I think the best thing to do would be to exchange that subwoofer for the dual voice coil version so you can use all 4 wires. But if you're in a situation where you can't, then best thing to do would be to cap off 1 pair of the speaker connections and just use 1/2 of your wires. Use 2 of them.
Or use those signals as input into a bigger subwoofer amplifier.
Yeah.
We can do that too. So many different combinations. So yeah, great questions, guys, and keep them coming. We love the teasers, and you had some good questions earlier when we were doing the demonstrations and talking about blowing speakers. So guys, that is awesome. You got anything else you want to?
I don't think so. Just thanks for tuning in.
You want to give some stuff away?
Oh yeah, I forgot about the giveaways.
Jacob, why don't you go and give some stuff away?
Let's see if I can remember how to do this. All
you
right.
read the screen. Bill puts it up there. Thank you for doing that, Bill. And JW.
All right, so let's see
Ernie.
who are...
This guy's been running tonight, back and forth with all the technical glitches.
And stuff. Let's see what, it's the 3rd prize winner first, right, John?
EB400s, Kicker koozie, and the Kicker Gray Unmasked t-shirt. So the 3rd prize winner is...
Let's see who it is. Omar S. from Texas.
Omar S. from Texas, you are the 3rd prize winner. Watch for an email from Bill Frog. Ask for your name, your phone number, your address, and your shirt size.
What he said.
So watch for that email. And congratulations.
Yeah, congrats. It's a cool prize.
So what do you call this? Is it runner-up? Is it first place, loser? I don't,
First loser? No.
Yeah,
it's
nobody's a loser at
I
this.
just say second place, second prize.
Second grand prize.
Yeah.
is going to be, drum roll please, Bill. Kibo. Where's Kibo from?
Where is Kibo from? It doesn't say where Kibo's from.
I see him post up there every now and then, but, well, Kibo, wherever you're from, watch for an email from Bill. And I would assume Bill has your email address, or you probably wouldn't have won, because that's how this stuff is all pulled, randomly from emails.
Yeah.
And it's not rigged. It's all random. So, very cool. Well, thanks again, Kibo. And the grand prize winner, which gets the bullfrog tonight.
Yeah, winner number 1
awesome?
for the bullfrog. Let's see who that is.
But it is sad because we're out of the Cush NCs.
I know. I love those headphones.
Absolutely love those.
Caleb B. from Louisiana.
Congratulations, Caleb. You are the grand prize winner. You get the little Bluetooth speaker, the little BF100. You get the Kicker koozie, and you get the gray Unmasked Kicker Unmasked t-shirt. The unmasked, gray unmasked. That's too many unmasked. You can tell we're getting tired.
That Chipotle is getting to you, huh, John?
Yeah, I think it's about time for an adult beverage. So if any of you guys are here in Stillwater watching the show and want to meet us at Buffalo Wild Wings, they're in about 30 to 45 minutes, come on by.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jacob's buying.
No, I'm not, but I'll be there.
Anyway, guys, thanks for joining. I hope you guys had some fun, and we had some fun blowing some things up and doing some demonstrations. I hope this sheds a little bit of light on what happens with speakers. Once again, I mean, that's pretty much generally what happens all the time. There are always the real subtle things, the weird things that happen that don't fit within those test parameters. But hey, if you're burning up coils one way or another, you don't have enough power unless you're physically holding the speaker from moving. So if you're burning up speakers, turn that gain down, set the controls right, shut the bass boost off, because that's a speaker killer too. So once again, guys, enjoy your sound. Send in your questions, your suggestions. Hit like and subscribe. Come and join us. What are we doing 2 weeks from today?
What is 2 weeks from today? Unmasked?
Yeah, we're going to do another Unmasked, but I don't even remember what we're doing. Anyway, well, watch. I'm sure the guys will put out a little teaser, let you know what we're going to be doing. But next Tuesday night, tune in for Living Loud with Andy. And as always, guys, tune in. He does a great job. He is one heck of a Kicker ambassador. And always got a good group of people, tuned into that, answering questions. And the Kicker Club. I mean, it goes without saying, it's probably the largest fan site from any brand on the internet is the Kicker Club. So what are we at? Almost 15,000 members? I can't even remember.
Something like that.
That's crazy.
I think there's a few groups larger than ours, but it is getting pretty big.
It's the largest one with Kicker gear. How's that
Yeah.
sound? But thank you again for doing that, Andy. Guys, have a great week, and hopefully it's going to warm up. It's probably 14 degrees outside. I'm not looking forward to that. Thank God for remote start. So, guys, have a good night. We are tuning out. Thank you again for all your help in the back there, Bill, Jeremy, and Ernie, and thanks for Jacob for joining me on the side up here. And we will see you guys again in 2 weeks. So have some fun and live loud. We're out.